and they cost $10 each. At the end of our program, there will be time for questions and answers uh, for those in attendance as well as our virtual attendees. We just ask that you wait till a microphone is given to you to ask your questions so that those online can hear. Empower U is a free university powered by donations. The costs incurred include website, constant contact, printing and advertising, virtual, some speaker, and personnel expenses. To allow us to continue offering these classes, we always pass a bucket at the end of each class. We welcome any small donation and thank you for understanding the costs we try to cover. Please feel free to provide any comments or feedback on any session you have attended. We also value your input on topics and ideas or speakers you may have. You can reach us at info@empoweruohio.org. Thank you for attending tonight's session, and at this time, I'd like to introduce the Director of Empower U, Dan Regano.
Thank you. It's great to have everybody here tonight. And just a couple things before we get started. I see a lot of new faces. Glad you could come. And if you haven't ever been to one of our events before, we've got a great semester of 24 classes, the most we've ever offered. And we owe a lot of that to our new operations manager, who's Amy Sander in the back. Could we give her a round of applause? She's done a great job. And also our producer, Andy Scarth, who helps us with all our sound and stuff. Let's give him a round of applause, too. So I wanted to tell you about a few of our classes that are coming up. We've got just a really, really big class tomorrow night. And I hope it hasn't kind of detracted a little bit from our attendance tonight. It's down at Midway School off, I always forget if it's Glenmore or Glenmore Avenue. And the topic is just going to be a really important topic, and that's the topic of the city of Cincinnati and why is it a sanctuary city. I really feel like it's one of the more important topics of our time. And David Mann, who probably many of you have known for years from the city of Cincinnati, will be joining us tomorrow night to explain why the mayor of Cincinnati decided that he wanted to make Cincinnati a sanctuary city. So for those of you interested in that can't join us, please, you can just go to empoweruohio.org, click on the link, and watch it online. Or we've been just having a lot of fun with this new app that we've got where you can watch it on your phones. You just have to download an app called Click Meeting. It's free, and you can just click a link and you're there, and you can hear. And I know we've got a couple people logged on tonight. Hi. On Thursday, we've got another class here, and it's called Faster, and it's kind of a guide to surviving an active shooter event. And we've had two classes the last 2 semesters. They've been some of our most popular classes we've ever done. This gentleman has a different approach for how you need to protect yourself if you ever get caught in one of those terrible situations. And then Tuesday, we're going to kind of be a little less serious. We're going to have the folks from Rivertown Brewery come in, and they've just built a new a place up in Monroe. And one of their key, what's that person's title, Amy? She's Rivertown's dream facilitator. That's the kind of title I want to have when I grow up. We'll be here. She's going to talk about the craft brewery business. Going to let you get your hands on some ingredients and more importantly, hopefully sample a few beers at the end of the night. So that will be Tuesday night. And that should be a great event. So we're going to give away, we've got a little giveaway we're going to give today. So get your tickets out. And right across the hall at the end of the Frame USA retail store, we've got a group of incredible artists. They're called Visionaries and Voices. And it's a group of about 65 disabled artists. They come in here and create great art every week. And they've got some studio coordinators that help enable them to create this great art. And their art is all throughout our whole building, and they do some incredible work. These are some note cards of the city of Cincinnati by probably their most famous artist, whose name is Courtney Cooper. And you may not know his work, but you would have seen it because it's around in a lot of spots really throughout the whole city, and also some cool little buttons. So get your ticket out, and I'm going to ask Brandon if you'd be kind enough to choose a number for us. All right, so number 619. All right, come on up, winner. Um, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our great program tonight. I'm so appreciative of Brandon Swinehart for coming in to talk to us tonight about a really important topic. And Brandon was born in Cincinnati in 1977. He grew up in a loving home with his parents and three siblings. All the tools for success in life were provided, and arts were always encouraged. Brandon spent most of his youth drawing and riding skateboards. Life was good, but in his early teenage years, he started to use drugs recreationally. Drugs became his focus of life in his last years in high school, which led to a 10-year struggle with drug addiction. He ended up homeless, a homeless heroin addict living on the streets of San Francisco. May 5th, 2005, Brandon decided it was time to take charge of his life. He's been in recovery since that day and has never looked back. Recovery has been good to Brandon, who is now a loving husband and father, a helpful son, good employee and business owner. And it's really an amazing thing what a second chance will do for people, for anyone. And I've known Brandon now for 5 years. And I'm just really appreciative for you to come in tonight and tell us your story. Brandon Swinehart.
Well, thanks, Dan, for having me in. So the first thing I wanted to do is take a little survey. How many people in here have had anyone or friends, family members, colleagues that have struggled with addiction? Raise your hand. Well, obviously, two of these people in here have known me for 40 years. So that's quite a bit, and I think, and you can include alcohol in that too. Not just drug addiction, but alcohol as well. So that could probably include everyone in this room. So addiction affects everyone's lives pretty much in this room. It's a pretty big piece of the population here tonight. So what I want to talk about now, you might know anyone firsthand knowledge besides myself. Anyone in here in recovery? No, I'm echoing a little bit here. Does anyone have any firsthand knowledge of drug addiction besides myself? All right, so there we go. So what I'm going to go over tonight is just kind of how it feels to be in drug addiction, what the psychic is, and how this process works. So 12 years ago, I was a homeless heroin addict living on the streets of San Francisco. I weighed, at that point, I think, it says right there, 165 pounds. That was a good weight for me at that time. I usually weighed about 137 pounds. I'm 6'3", I weigh 205 now. So imagine taking 70 pounds off me right now. And that's what I look like walking around the streets. So, my father used to call the San Francisco County morgue to see if my body had shown up there because I never called anyone. I'd be gone, no one would hear from me for months. And that was the life I was living. Now, it wasn't always like that. What I'm going to go over quickly with you, and I want you to think about this question throughout the rest of the night. What is drug addiction? Drug addiction is a chronic, often relapsing brain disease that causes compulsive drug seeking and use despite harmful consequences to the drug addict and those around them. Drug addiction is a brain disease because of the abuse of drugs leads to changes in the structure and function of the brain. Growing up on the streets was hard. Like Dan said, I grew up in a loving home. My father was still one of the corners of Butler County. And I had loving siblings. I got every opportunity existed for me. I could have gone and been a doctor. I could have done any of these things. But it just wasn't in the cards. I just felt different from everyone. When I was younger, I was sensitive. I really I really fought for the underdog. I wanted the underdog to win it, no matter what. I always supported the people that weren't doing well for some reason. That was who I wanted to be around. And just like Dan said in my introduction, I started using drugs when I was 13 years old. I started out smoking pot, riding with my friends with skateboards. That was just my life. I wanted to be a part of something. And when I smoked pot, drank beer, I felt like I was someone. I felt like I fit in. The pieces missing in my life had come together, and I felt okay with who I was. And I had found my solution. The solution continued to get worse as I got older. By age 16, smoking pot, drinking daily, LSD, all those drugs that people do at that age. Well, it's very common. I think in high schools now today, a lot of kids are smoking pot, recreational, a little drinking. But I started going further. By a senior in high school, I was a blackout drinker, I was a crack smoker, and I was selling drugs. And that was my whole life. My life revolved around drugs, the getting, the using, and the finding ways to get more and sell. And that was all I wanted to do. I didn't want to go to school. It wasn't important to me. It did not matter. It mattered to a lot of other people in my life, but for some reason it didn't matter to me. And I ended up in Southern California, and within a couple years out there, I was shooting heroin. And that was in 1999. Now, I've been around heroin and intravenous drug use since probably 94, since I was about 17 years old. I'd seen a lot of people getting involved. And that's when it was kind of taking a surge back, kind of like the huge surge we have right now with a lot of the kids. A huge surge was happening at that time, especially in Northern California, Northwestern Pacific part of the country. And a lot of my friends were out there, so that's what we were getting involved with. I stayed away, I kind of saw the deal with it, and I was like, nah, it's not me, I don't want to get involved. But eventually, I'd done everything else, it was time to move on up. And that's what I did. And I kept thinking, just like I thought with everything else, that I'm different. Those things don't apply to me. I'm not going to become a strung out heroin addict like my friends. I'm going to use successfully. And I'm going to sell drugs, and I'm going to be fine. And nothing's ever going to happen. That's just this illusion that I lived in. And it worked well for me until it stopped working. And that was when I never realized that. I thought when people told me when they go into withdrawal that it was just a story. It was, oh, you were being a baby. No, that's real. That's very, very real. And I started going into withdrawal. And I realized at that point that this problem was a little bit bigger, but at the same time, this was my new solution. How could I imagine living life without shooting heroin and smoking crack and everything else that goes with it? That was what I wanted to do. And that eventually came to a crashing end in 99. I went to a first treatment center in San Diego. And this was the first nice treatment center I went to. I remember my parents flew out to see me, my older brother came down from Los Angeles to take me, and it was a big event. And I just went because everyone wanted me to go. I didn't want to stop using. I didn't know what else to do. I wanted everyone to get off my back. So I let my family waste some money, and I went somewhere for 2 months. And I got out. I did the exact same thing. And I was strung out within 3 weeks. Went back down to the beach, sold drugs, and that's what I did. And that just started wearing on me. And I was like, California has a lot of drugs. It's the problem. California's the problem. It's not Brandon's fine. California's fine. I'm going to go back to Cincinnati. And I didn't tell my family this because I knew if I told them, they'd be no, stay in California for you. And so I just packed up my car and I drove straight to Cincinnati, and I just showed up with a dog and a bunch of stuff in a truck that was been beat up from living in the streets of San Diego. And I'd stopped using heroin. I'd kicked before I came out to Cincinnati, and it's going to be different this time. I was just going to drink. I was going to smoke pot like my friends. And, 15th and Race down over the Rhine, that used to not be the way it is now. That used to be where people bought heroin, and that was the area of town where you'd go. And I found my way down there. And it's not like it is today. It was hard. You had to really kind of dig the well to find what you were looking for in Cincinnati. But it was starting to change at that time. A lot of people were using Oxycontin, opioids, over abuse from getting prescribed prescribed too much medication, and that's what was going on. And within 2 months of being in Cincinnati, I was strung out on heroin. And it's very hard to manage when you don't make much money and you're working 2 jobs, and it just wasn't working, you know. And so, you know, it's like anything else. You start stealing from people. You start lying to everybody. You start doing things you didn't think you feel good about. But at the moment, you know, can you imagine the best way I could describe this to you is waking up with the worst flu you've ever had. Now go to work and landscaping at 40 degrees in the rain for 8 hours, no money, still sick. What are you going to do? You got to come up with $40, $60. And you know if you get that flu's over in a minute. It's over. So you got to come up with the money. You got to steal. You got to sell. You got to do whatever. Now this was the beginning. This is just how things get started. This is like, oh, you're getting. I was like a freshman in the heroin world at this time, and it was actually on my father's birthday. I skipped going to dinner, and I ended up in the Justice Center. I was arrested for 3 felony possessions, heroin, cocaine. And as you can see in that picture, I was not hard at all. I was a little scared kid. And, you know, they let me out the next day. They OR'd me, and I was off to drug court. And I did all these things, you know. I remember going into drug court with my mom, and I'm trying to talk to the judge, and she said, Mr. Swinehart, can you stand up? My mom's like, that's Master Manipulator, Your Honor. His name's... And it was a little scary. You know, I had to deal with these charges against me. I'd never been in trouble like this. There's all those things that I thought weren't going to happen to me were happening. You know, the thought of maybe going to prison was very scary. You know, I'm not from some rough neighborhood. I'm not some tough guy. Even though I thought this in my head, I am not that at all. You know, and so I went through the motions. I went through Process House. I met all these people, and I just could not stop violating my probation. There was a part of me that really wanted to stop, but there was a part of me that didn't want to listen to anyone, was much stronger, and they would win every time. And I couldn't, I could fight it for so long, I could white knuckle through, and this AA is great, and all this stuff's great, and I was miserable. I hated it. I had all this other stuff going on. I couldn't deal with it. You know, when you've been using like this, your family, you know, my older brother at the time was, you know, headed to Yale for a PhD on a fluoride fellowship. My sister was in vet school. I'm a heroin addict. My little brother was going to college. I was a total loser. And that's how I felt. The amount of shame and guilt that I carried was so tremendous at times that I didn't feel like I was worth of anything, worth of anyone's love, worth of anyone's attention. So I just kept doing it. I found the people that were miserable as I was, and we were miserable together. And within 2 years of trying to do that, I was new charges, 2 different states, on my way to prison. I couldn't change. I could not let go of trying to live my life without the use of substances. I couldn't. It wasn't worth living to me. To imagine I had to get up and feel normal every single day, that sounds like torture. I was more willing to go to prison than give that up. That was my solution to life. So how am I going to give that up? So I spent my time in prison, and I remember I went to prison, and you know, I'm taking this. You take a test in prison. It's a really odd thing. They figure out where you're going to get a job. So I'm in a room with 400 people, and I'm taking this test, IQ test. I'm taking this test, and this guy next to me was cheating on me. I said, "We don't have the same test. You understand?" And after that, I get the psychiatrist calls me, and this is CRC, the Receiving Center in Columbus. And he calls me in there, I'm meeting with him. He said, "What are you doing here?" And then he looked at my record and goes, "I see." He's like, "You're a drug addict." And I said, "Well, why?" He goes, "You scored the highest on either." He goes, "You're the only one that took that test, the highest level test. You're the only one that took it. And you scored the highest on it. So why are you here?" And I said, "Well, the police caught me." "Okay. Yes, they did. They did catch you. But you're a drug addict." So, and that's all he had to say is that. He said, you've done well on the test, you can pretty much get any job you want in prison. And I did. I got a great job in prison. But needless to say, that's not a very good thing to put on a resume. So just a little fast forward to where the last 2 years of my addiction. I was released from prison December 16th, 2002. Within a few weeks, I was strung out again. Within a couple months, I was catching new charges. It was time to leave Cincinnati because Cincinnati is hard on crime and you can't be here, gotta go. And I knew there was one place, and I was with this girl I'd been with on and off for years, and she and I were our little using buddies. And she had been in San Francisco before many times, and she said, "Let's go to San Francisco." And I said, "Yes, I think that's the solution to our problem." And to a lot of people in our age group and that were into that scene at the time, that was Mecca. Are you going to get in trouble in San Francisco? Yeah. Slap on the wrist. It's drugs are everywhere. There's tons of hustle. The people that know you from your real world life are nowhere to be found. So you're a new person. Nothing matters out there. You can do whatever you want. And I remember driving out there, getting there in the end of May of 2003 with my car that was towed 3 days later, and I just lost it. And I was like, I'm in heaven. But it was hard. I've never had to hustle and steal and do whatever it took to survive like that in my life. The people that were around me, the people, when we got out there, my ex-girlfriend at the time, she knew all these people. These people are still there. They've been there 6, 8 years. These are people that have been on the streets, the Tenderloin, since they were 12 years old. So these are people that have been shooting drugs since they were 14, and these are 26. A lot of them had AIDS. A lot of them were on dialysis at 30. No homes, broken homes, just terrible situation. And this wasn't the situation for a lot of us out there. We were just drug addicts. And this was my new group of friends: prostitutes, people dying of AIDS, people in and out of San Quentin. I mean, bank robbers, anyone, Hell's Angels. We were all out there together, and that's where it got real crazy. And I don't. It's a terrible feeling, just like that. Like I told you before, to have that worst flu you've ever had, and you wake up every day, and you're in a hotel with people smoking crack in the hallways, and you have to pay $40 a day to stay there. And you're thinking, I have to come up with $20 this morning to get better. Maybe I can bum a cigarette off somebody. Food doesn't matter. And then whatever it takes to get to where we are from there. Then we'll go to Nordstrom's, whatever. Let's go rip them off for a while. And that was the daily thing. And talking to people like, oh, drug addiction is a serious job. It is tough. It is so much work that coming to a job and going home at 5 o'clock is just like a dream come true. The amount of planning and scheming, and I mean, it's insane. And that's where I had friends out there that were just amazing graphic designers, and they were out on the streets. I remember sitting on the street with my buddy, and the police came up to us, and she said, "Come here." And we walked over to the car, and she said, "Is your name Jason?" He said, "Yes, it's Jason." She holds up a missing person report. She goes, "Can you get in the car with me, and let's call your mom, because they've been looking for you for a year." And he was in his 20s. He went to art school, had a great job in New York, lost it all. Living behind Popeye's Chicken on the Visadero Street. And that was my life. For 2 years, it was this constant cycle. I was out there for a few months, and I thought I was just going to be out there, and it was just going to be I'll be out here a few months, I'll get caught by the police, and I'll get extradited out of here. And I'll go back to Cincinnati, and I'll just start over again. I'll go to prison there. I was on the run. But I did. I got arrested, and the police officer said, "They're not coming. You're too far away. They're not coming out here for you." They came out and got my girlfriend at the time. So then she was gone, and I was left alone. So I had to learn how to fend for myself, and I made all the new friends, and I made some serious connections with some people there that if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be standing here today. I overdosed about 20 times in San Francisco. I've been Narcan, I've been taken to the hospital, but most of the time I've given CPR by another person I was using. And that person was Eric, and that parent was Rich. Both have died of AIDS in the past few years. Both very, very nice people. Very, very sad to think about. But just so these are the hotels I stayed in. This is Turk Street, San Francisco. Stayed there, and I stayed down the street. And this is what you came out from every day. But usually there's about 50 people on cardboard boxes laying down, and it was anything goes. And no one messed with the police. It was just too much. The police, unless you were like doing a murder on the street, there's too much for them to worry about. It's overwhelming. And this section is known as the Tenderloin. So this was where I walked in circles for 2 years. That's how small my world is in drug addiction. And it takes place here in every community, these neighborhoods, that people are just walking around in 3-block radiuses, and they don't leave there for 10, 15 years. And this whole world's going on outside them. Their families are moving on, holidays are happening. They're in this little hole. And they're forgotten. And that's what happens. You walk. And what happened is, I lost a lot of friends. Things were starting to get very bad. I'd had a head injury. I'd been hit by a car and had a head injury. Was in ICU for about 8 days, I think. And I got out, and I just kept doing the same thing, no matter what. And by early spring into May, early May of 2005, I hit a bottom that I couldn't come out of. I was at that point, I was just drinking daily. I wasn't even strung out on heroin anymore. And it wasn't working. No matter how much I tried to get strung out again or shoot drugs in, it wouldn't work. I'd freak out my friends. I thought all of San Francisco ganged up on me to rip me off. And that's a pretty insane thing to think, but it just stopped working. And what I did was, I remember May 4th of 2005, I was walking down Polk Street in San Francisco. I walked about 8 blocks down the market. There were several lights along the way. It was pouring rain, and I was just walking along. I was walking straight through the lights. Stop. If I get hit by a car, it's fine. I don't care. I walked straight to Market Street. And by the time I got to Market Street, obviously I didn't get hit. I guess it worked out. People were driving because it was raining so bad. And I sit on Market Street, and there's this doorway, this big doorway, and I'm sitting there because it's raining. And I just started crying. And I didn't cry like that in probably 5, 6 years. And I realized at that point that I couldn't do this any longer. That my solution for life no longer fit, and no longer worked. And I was scared because I didn't know at 28 years old how to survive, how to pay rent, how to pay taxes, how to have a career. And I see all these other people around me that just, they just keep going, and they're dead now. They're gone. I didn't want to die. I don't want to be dead. I have the things I wanted to do. And I realized that. I don't know, it wasn't just a lightning moment yet, but I knew that it was time to do something else. So I walked into a homeless shelter. I think it's a high-rise building now or something. It was right on South End S and Market. And you couldn't sleep on the floor. You just sleep in a chair. And I listened to mentally ill people scream all night and talk to each other and push each other and take cigarettes. And it was just like, oh my God. In the 2 years that I'd been on the streets, I'd never been in a homeless shelter. I'd rather sleep on a box on the street and deal with that. And at that moment, I woke up the next morning. It was sunny. One of the guys that ran the place gave me a cigarette. And I was happy. And I said, I'm done. May 5th, I'm done. And I walked to San Francisco County Jail, about 8 blocks away. And I walked right in, and I said, I'm here to turn myself in. And they were, what? What are you doing? I said, I'm here to turn myself in. They said, well, okay, let's go. And I remember my probation officer at the time, Stacy Gardner. I'd had several charges against me in San Francisco. I've been in and out of jail there, too. And she said, "Are you ready to do this?" I said, "I'm ready." And she said, "What changed?" I said, "I don't know, but I'm ready to do it." She said, "That's great. Let's get you booked in shape." And I said, "All right." So that first picture I showed you was my last mugshot. You know, the, I wish I could show you some of the worst ones. San Francisco wouldn't give them to us. They said, "You can have that one, and that's it." So that was the last time, May 5th of 2005 was the first day, and I've not used drugs or alcohol since. So now that's just a decision. A lot of people make decisions to stop smoking, to stop drinking, to stop gambling. I'm going to stop eating cookies. And, those are decisions. Now, to follow through with the decision was the part that was the hard part. That was the part I could never commit to. And that's where everything comes in. And so when I went to jail, instead of hanging around a bunch of people that are in and out of the prison system, I said, I'm going to go to those classes where they have NA meetings, and that's what I'm going to do. And I did that, and I met people, in AA and other 12-step fellowships. I started making connections. I knew I was getting out, and I knew I had nothing. I had nowhere to go, nothing, and not a phone. I went to jail with a broken Discman and a terrible CD and dirty clothes, and that's all I had to my name. That's all I had. And so I spent 2 months there. I'd finished a charge, and I was there for several possession for sale cases, and I had a choice. I can go to San Quentin, and the judge said, or we can put you in Prop 36, which is kind of like a drug court thing in San Francisco and California. And I said, I'll do Prop 36. That's okay, and I want to go across the bay to San Quentin. And the judge told me, he was a very nice, very, very nice man, and he told me, if you do this for me, I'll take you on probation in a year, and I promise you, you'll have a new life, and you can do whatever you want. Stay away from Ohio. He said, don't go within 500 miles. He said, we're going to keep you right here, and we're going to help you get better. And I said, okay. And I did it. I did everything he told me to do. And when I was released from jail, they put you in treatment centers in San Francisco, and I went to the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic. I went to one of their treatment centers. But just like anything, there's huge lines to get into these beds. But people come and go all the time. And so I went to a hotel on the corner of that street that I showed you, Turk and Post. And it was called the Page Hotel. And it was not a very good place to sit, when you're trying to stay clean. People were using drugs in the hallway. But I was determined. I had no money, no phone, no nothing. I had a skateboard someone gave me, and I skateboarded and I rode. I jumped on the back of the bus, and I went to any NA or AA meeting I could go to. And people would take me out to dinner. They would talk to me. They became my friends. They became role models for me. And so I did that. And I was building this foundation before I even went to treatment. I had the tools. I knew what I was supposed to be doing. And that's what I did. And I went into treatment. And I've been to treatment so many times at this point. It's just like blah, blah, blah. Don't you, this behavioral stuff. I knew the solution for me. I knew what I had to do for myself. And that's what I did. I made that connection in Narcotics Anonymous. And that's where I still have a connection today. And my focus was, I don't have to use anymore. I don't have to do this. No matter what happens in my life, I don't have to use drugs. And the strange thing that happened with me and another friend of mine that's local here, was a big part of my recovery in the beginning and is now too, is I lost that obsession to use on May 5th. Something happened and I said, never doing this again. And I never did it again. And I've tried to keep that in everything that I do as well. Okay, I'm going to commit to this. Haven't committed to everything that way, but I've done my best to, I really had to make a lot of changes. Like I said, it's scary coming back into the world when you've been hiding out in alleyways for 10 years. What are you supposed to talk about? If I was in a conversation with my wife then, I would have nothing to say to her except, well, I know where to get a good deal on some crack on the street. It's just, that's all I had to offer. I had nothing to offer at the time. I had some experience that I could help myself with. and that's what I could do. And what happened was, luckily I got clean in California. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of people out there that believe in a certain way of doing things. And they didn't believe 12 step, if that's where you wanted to go, if you wanted to go a different way, they were willing to help you. They just wanted, if you needed to get on methadone, San Francisco put you on methadone. If that's what it took to get you to court, they were going to do it for you. I didn't need, and but coming back into the workforce, I didn't have to do that for a long time. I stayed in treatment for about 8 months, but when I finally got out, it was time to take care of myself. It was time to pay my bills. It was time to pay back debt that I'd owed. And that was scary. What do? I have no resume. What am I going to, where have you been for the past 10 years? Well, the background check, I got flying colors on that. Can't we go off that? And it was very scary. How do you deal with that? And just thinking about my experience is mild to some people that come out of prison after 5, 10 years and want to get back in society. I'm sorry. You're pretty much locked out. You can go work construction. You can go work here. You can do this. They don't care if you've done these things. And that's where I kind of felt like I was headed until, a good friend of mine, Tracy, who recently, he's from Cincinnati, but lives out there, wrote a book about heroin. She was actually part of a documentary about heroin in San Francisco. They followed her around for 3 years, and she's been clean now 19 years. But she was like my big sister. She actually had gone to high school with my sister, Nicole. She looked out for me, and she said, Brandon, there's this place that hires people, nonprofit, and they print T-shirts and do something into it. I'm like, yeah, that's not, I've always wanted to do that. So what happened is I was so driven, I called the owner or the general manager every single day. I wanted a job, and I was serious, and I wanted to do this so badly. And finally, they just called me back to just come in. You're very persistent. So I came in, and I started catching shirts, and it was a whole other world. So this is me in 2006 after I'd become the lead printer. Now what was special about this is this company is a nonprofit. They only hired at-risk adults, but they had started to hire at-risk youth. I was the last at-risk adult employee they took. So the general manager was also a recovering heroin addict, and he had been clean for 8 years. And he and I became very, very close friends. And he is what I'd say a leader in the screen printing industry nationally. And he took me with him everywhere he went. He eventually left that company because they were starting focusing on children, and he felt the adults were where they needed the most help. And what's sad is, Mark right there that was printing with me, we found him dead of a heroin overdose. He didn't come to work one day, and we knew something was wrong, and a good friend of ours was out there. We sent him out there, and he and his older brother broke into the apartment. He was on the floor glass, and he was 20. His parents own a famous Japanese restaurant in Los Angeles, one of the most talented artists I've ever seen. His sister's a tattoo artist in San Francisco now. Amazing, amazing person. So next, just gonna play, Andy.
They're also successful at transforming people, like Brandon Swinehart, who's recovering from substance abuse.
This is what I needed, was the employment, the opportunity to change and do things with my life. Now, that's when the news came, and we opened a new facility. I was part of that. And this was my experience. I was so excited. This is what I needed. Was the next level, like I just talked about, re-entering into society. I was excited to pay my bills. When I got to write checks, I was happy. When I paid my rent, this was a new way of life that I had not experienced ever. And I didn't have to use it with drugs. And what's sad is also Jessica, who's in this picture with us, she was found dead about a year after this was filmed. She died of a heroin overdose. She was a foster child. Struggled for years. She had gotten into college through a program, was doing well, and then relapsed and died of a heroin overdose. So, like I said, with my experience with Kevin, the general manager at the time of Ashbury Images, took me with him. So I went to another facility where I was a production manager of a high volume screen printing facility. And then after some time there, he couldn't handle it anymore. He wanted to give back. His thing was social mission. He wanted to give back to society and those that struggled like he did. He has no college education. He was just wanted to, very determined. And so they started another company called Social Imprints in San Francisco. They asked me to become one of the first sales representatives with them. So in 2009, we were starting this company in a small office on Market Street, about the size of the bathroom downstairs here. And it was a lot of fun. It was very powerful. But at the same time, this was an advancement for me into sales. And I'd done sales. I'd done a lot of sales, but never like, not at a desk making phone calls. It was my type of sales. And so it was a struggle. I had to learn. I had to learn quick because I was surviving on commission. And it was a startup, so we didn't have tons of money. So I was surviving on very little. And at this time, it's just my life was changing so much, so many more responsibilities. And around that time is when I met my wife. And I met my wife at my brother's wedding. And this relationship became more important to me than a lot of stuff that was going on outside of me. And I think I pursued this relationship because I finally found someone that understood me and liked me regardless of anything from the beginning. And I'm glad she knows me now or then, other than before then, because it probably wouldn't be the case. But a long story short, in all this time, it's been hard. It's been hard to learn how to be an adult. How do I follow through with this? How do I become responsible? How do I lend a caring ear? How do I listen to people who have problems when I've been in my own world for so long? And so, getting married and having children, and you learn a lot of lessons with that, and I think I've done well with it. I've struggled here and there, and it's just been a very eye-opening experience, just like recovery. And a few years ago, when Dan introduced me, he's known me for 5.5 years now. This is the longest job. I sell frames here for Frame USA. And I'm still proud to say that the largest order, the largest sale in the history of Frame USA. And, but it's just, this company's done a lot for me as well. It's helped me grow. The people around here and the people I've worked with have helped me grow as well. And I'm very appreciative of that. I was given an opportunity. Dan, I had references done now. I had people that knew me and said, this guy's a straight shooter. Regardless of all you see over here, here's 5 years of straight shooting. And I think we should give him a chance. And I was given a chance. Now I've been here 5.5 years. And a few $1 million later, I'm doing pretty well with sales, And it's like when I talk to my friends now in San Francisco, like, yeah, we knew it. We knew you were good at what you were doing. It's just, I think you were a little focused on pursuing your relationship. And they said, I think this paid off for you greater in the end than staying with us. And it's strange to sit here now in front of you guys and tell you about this. I don't know how to define it sometimes. I just wake up, pay my bills, and people want to talk to me about stories. Oh my God, I can't believe you were a heroin addict. And that's just my reality. That's just who I was. It doesn't seem that strange to me. But when I tell someone here like about my history, there's what? Or people like my wife said we'd run into people here and like, you're alive? I thought you were dead. And it's just like, well, no, it's just I was just doing something kind of crazy for a little while. Now I'm not. No, it was a serious problem. I kind of minimize it sometimes, but I see what's going on today in Cincinnati and in the country. And it's scary. If I was using today, I wouldn't be here. I'd be dead. With all the fentanyl and everything else around, I'd be dead. I used very, very hard. I was a very scary person to use drugs with. People got scared. I pushed things way too far. And, I look at the people now, these kids are leaving high school. They're strung out like that. What are we going to do? How are the prison population in all these states, it's going to start growing. It's going to get bigger and bigger. And people are going to get out, and they're going to have nowhere to go, and they're going to be like me, and they're going to go right back. They're going to do the same thing. And there's going to be kids, and there's going to be parents, there's going to be sisters and brothers left behind, and that's it. No answers, no solutions. So, you know, my wife and I and another partner for the past about 3, 4 years, we started a company on the side. It's called SO Prints. And what we do is we are a custom branding company. So you call us and we print T-shirts, promotional products for you, and create design marketing solutions for your business. And we do all this after hours. We're all full-time employees other places. And we have a social mission, which is to give careers to recovering drug addicts. So in order to work with us, the only one part of the team that's not a drug addict is my wife. I think she's drank 2 beers at once before. And it's a very different worlds, but we come together on our values and what's important in life. And our goal is to, we grew this company from $500 to $50,000 in sales last year. We were part of the Big Pitch in Cincinnati with Artworks, and we were part of Bad Girl Ventures. We were finalists in all these competitions. And we've done well. We've earned a lot of credit in the media. I was like I'm speaking here tonight. I spoke for Cincinnati Choir, Storytellers, True Theater. That was more of a fun deal about addiction. I told some stories there. And it's just been an ongoing thing that I really, I was on the phone yesterday with Kelly from Interchange. It's Interactive for Health, or one of those organizations. And I had done some work with them before through the needle exchange in Cincinnati. And she said, I want you to be part of the board. I think it's important that you're a part of what's going on. She goes, it's going to be working with police officers. You're going to be working with community. Let's find solutions. Let's look outside the box. She goes, I like that, the part where you come, because I used to work for the needle exchange in San Francisco. And I've helped the needle exchange here as well. And this is what we want to do. We want to create these opportunities, and we can do that. Create employment for people that have felony records or drug addiction issues. I want careers like I have a career. I want to give someone a second chance like Dan gave me a second chance or Kevin gave me a second chance. And that's what's important. Eventually, hopefully our company grows enough for us to do that's what we're going to do. But right now it's where it's at and we're happy with that. And, there's a lot of issues that go around regarding addiction. And I hope that nationally we can come up with a solution. And right now, I think, we're running on myths. We're running on old information. And I think there's a lot of room for change. I think, when I was getting clean and the past 10 years it's been coming up, that tough love from families isn't effective. It doesn't work. It pushes people very far away. And I think people did that at the time because that was the best information at the time. And that's what you have, that's what you work with. But I think if anyone now has a son or a daughter or someone out there that's using as part of your family, I think it's important to say, we can't be around you right now because you're stealing or you're hurting us. But I'd like to see you. I'd like to take you to dinner next week. We meet somewhere and have this. Keep that connection as much as possible, because the opposite of addiction and loneliness is obviously love. So if you show some type of love for these people, I came from a good home. The people and that's, I knew when I got clean, if I straightened up, I could call my parents and say, I love you, I miss you, and I want to come back, I want to make things better. And that was going to happen. I knew if I did things that was going to happen. For the people I was friends with on the street, they had no mom and dad. There was nothing. There was nobody. The only people they had were the people they found in meetings or maybe a counselor or a probation officer that was very helpful. And that was hard. If you imagine living that life with nothing, I don't want to see that. So I want to be that person. I want to be that person, someone I can help and say, hey, I'm going to call Brandon at SRO and see if he can help me with that. He believes in me. He'll help me out. And that's fine with me. Because there's so many people that don't have anything, And there's a lot of things going on in Cincinnati right now. I know that the needle exchange is probably going to be taken over by the city. And there's a lot of weird feelings about that stuff. A lot of people believe that, if you give syringes to drug addicts, you're going to use drugs. Well, actually in Ohio, you can buy them at the pharmacy. It's not illegal. So you can go buy them. It's not, but most people are scared. They don't want to go in there. And what we have found and what, my lessons in San Francisco working with the harm reduction teams out there is the people that I used to get the needles from, it was the only time I felt like a person. Someone was there. How are you doing? That's the only time anyone asked how I was doing like that. You're like, so much. You need to clean this up. You have an infection. You need to get checked out. You like a pamphlet to go to treatment. So that's where those connections happen. You know, and I spoke with a police officer, and when I spoke with the Inquirer, and he said there's been such a change in the way that they view addiction. He said, my officers are coming back. I need more Narcan. Chief, I need more. I've used all mine up helping people. I need more. I want to be helpful. I'm not interested in arresting these people. I'm interested in helping them. And he said they're asking questions. How can we be of service? Because they see it now. I'm sure some of them have siblings, sons, children. They're involved in this. It's a big issue. And just like I said before, we're talking about reentry. We've got this big population that's suffering. Pretty soon it's going to get out of control again. Where are we going to be? What are we going to propose, to help these people? You can't lock them all up. It's not going to work. It hasn't worked in 50 years. It's not the solution. Now I understand, breaking laws, there's consequences to that. Am I saying you shouldn't? No. You go to jail when you break the law. That's how it goes. But there's got to be some type of reentry. You just don't throw people out on the streets. That's why more crime happens. And I think if we focus more on treating the problem rather than the symptoms, crime are symptoms of drug addiction. Stealing, all these, they're all symptoms. They're not the problem. They're the symptoms. It's like a lot of things. It's like this doctor spoke at the thing this morning. He said, when people had cancer in the 60s, hid away. You don't want to, you lost your hair, you went chemo. The family didn't, you didn't go out. It's kind of like what happens now with addiction. No one wants to talk about it. Their son's messed up. It's embarrassing. They don't want to talk about it. I think that's the important time to talk about it. I think that's the important time for people to get involved. And I think a lot of people around this community, especially in Northern Kentucky, have really gotten involved. They're changing policies in the state, how they deal with things. But I don't want to hold up too much more of your time. I think I've said enough. So if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer some questions. I hope this has been helpful.
Questions?
I'm older than you are, right? And I think that my generation was somebody that contributed greatly to the problems that we have now, because my parents were like the World War II era, and they just didn't put up with it. I mean, they instilled in my brother and I that you just didn't do these things, and we always kept that in mind. But it seems that, we've gotten more and more permissive. So I'm wondering, where does a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old, where do they just go out and get drugs?
In this community, really, I think what a lot of things, the people I've talked to lately, I talk to people at NA meetings, these younger guys come in, and their parents and other things I've spoken at, and they've told me, like, my son was 14 in high school. Like, well, it all started. He got hurt in football. He got some Percocet. And he kept getting Percocet. And when you're 14 years old, that type of medication is very powerful. Very, very powerful. So it changes the way you feel. When you're 14 years old, you're very impressionable. Guess what? You're depressed, you can't play ball, but you feel great. But those prescriptions run out. Your older brother's friend can get heroin down the street. You can make these calls. I'd say you could probably get heroin faster than you get marijuana in Cincinnati right now. And that wasn't always the case, but right now the prevalence of online, you can do, I mean, it's just there. These problems have been here a long time, and they're not going anywhere. They're just going to get bigger. And I think part of the blame is the overprescribing pain medication and abuse. And that's doctors not being aware. Doctors being scared to speak up because they don't want to get in trouble. They're telling people, denying them their pain. I mean, how do you rank that? How do you, as a physician, tell your patient, I think you have a problem. I'm not giving you anymore. That could ruin your practice. You could get, I don't know, you get sued. So how they get drugs, why they seek drugs, that's the answer. We need to find the solution. We need to find an answer to all the problems. And I think we're coming to a part in society now that we're looking for those answers. Instead of, like you said, your parents, and a lot of people, parents, they didn't know. No one knew. So there's no one to blame. It just wasn't, everyone didn't know what to do. I mean, think about World War II in Vietnam. There's a huge amount of people injured and ruined their whole lives. Came back with huge problems with opiates. Vietnam, I knew guys that had been clean for 40, 30 years that I met in San Francisco that all got strung out in Vietnam. 18 years old, turned into bank robbers, and then got clean. You know, that's their lifestyle. But it's just, we don't know the solution. I think we need to do a lot more research. I think finally, medically, they're starting to make breakthroughs now. But I mean, I think the prison industry out kind of weighs research. You know, the prison industry is the strongest union in California. They dictate policy.
Questions for Brandon?
Right here.
On the screen, you said that it was your brain gets changed. Do you feel like your brain is changed?
Yes, I believe what happens is when you're especially doing certain drugs like cocaine and heroin, crystal meth, what happens is that releases huge amounts of dopamine into your brain, into your system. And that's your pleasure thing. That's when you're eating ice cream. You like ice cream, it makes you feel good. Your body releases a little dopamine. When you shoot heroin and cocaine, it dumps it out, and you start depleting the receptors. And at that point, you need to keep going to make you feel like you did before. And they say a lot of times when you've been using a long time, you go into recovery, there's this period where you feel empty because you've just been running and running and running and just changing the way you think. And then all of a sudden you don't know what brings you pleasure anymore because only that brought me pleasure. So it's, yeah, you have to reconnect. You have to really take some time off to really get your thoughts back together.
You mentioned that you were on heroin, and then I believe you said you went to just drinking.
Yeah, what? Oh, I'm sorry.
How does this work? Because I've heard once you get on heroin,
Well,
toward the end.
what happened was when I'd been put on methadone in San Francisco, and you know, I had a problem with benzos, the Valium and Xanax, and I was thinking about taking about 200 milligrams of Valium a day, mixed with methadone, crack, and everything else. So what that would do is that with methadone, it freed up my heroin money to buy other stuff. So I did that. So I was getting phased. I couldn't show up to methadone half the time. So I was getting phased down. They were taking me off because I couldn't make it there half the time. And I was just so blown away on Xanax and Valium that I didn't even realize that I was withdrawing. And then what happened was I had the head injury and I went into the hospital. I had fentanyl, everything all over me. And I was so upset with the doctor. I said, you don't know what I just went through to get off this methadone. I started ripping the stuff off my chest. He said, you're in the ICU, son. You get 32 staples in your head. You have to stay still. But after that, I kind of didn't get too far involved. I was more focused on, I just didn't really get strung out. So I was smoking a lot of crack.
Question.
Thank you. I'm Lonnie Tucker, and I'm a member of the Butler County Mental Health and Addiction Recovery Services Board. First of all, everyone in this room, we're taxpayers. I want to say thank you because we passed the levy, we have funds, we give those funds to providers, and I must commend you because this is all about educating our communities. No matter what zip code we live in, every family in those zip codes has experienced this scourge. And I want to know from you, what is your feeling about the system itself? And let me preface this. Yes, we've made a lot of inroads. I'm sitting on the Opiate Council for Butler County, the Opiate Task Force for Hamilton County, and Middletown has now an Opiate Task Force. I must confess to you, our first responders are getting sick and tired of running to the same house 10, 11 times, and I know their attitudes are changing. Because if you just heard in the news, some guy had to get 5 shots, if you can understand it, of Narcan. Normally, one is supposed to bring you back, but they have to use 5. So again, your money is being well spent. We are good stewards of the fund. But I want to know, with you going through the system, has it changed much here as relates to treatment and recovery?
I think access has improved. Now, when I got involved in heroin and I got arrested in 2000, 17 years ago here, it wasn't nearly as much. You know, I have good friends with David Logan at Prospect House and, you know, Roger Zeller and all of them. And, you know, what I think what we need to realize is um, there are many ways for people to get clean. And sometimes methadone or any of those tools can be useful tools to get people clean. Now, I was on methadone, I was using other drugs. I didn't have a reason, you know, it wasn't in my cards at the time. I wasn't interested. But I mean, I went to the clinic with guys. I'd see there at 6 in the morning. That means they were headed to work. They were serious. They wanted a new life, and they were taking their methadone, and they were picking it up for the week, and they were going to be successful, and they went to their job. Now, I was there at 6 in the morning because I'd been out all night. And you know, but there were people that were using this successfully. Same with Suboxone. Suboxone is a nice, useful tool, and I think physicians are scared to prescribe it. And really, I think to make the changes we need, I think physicians need to step up. I think I think new doctors, especially anesthesiologists and people involved in prescribing, you know, surgeons, need to really take a course in what opioid addiction looks like. Because, you know, Percocet is just a pharmaceutical heroin. You know, heroin's cheaper, it's stronger, and I don't need a prescription. So, and with fentanyl and everything else, you said people go in the same house 10 times. There's no solution. And the thing is, right now in the Ohio River Valley, and you probably know this, is the hepatitis C rate is one of the highest in the nation. So, and listen, I like to talk about needle exchanges because it's a big thing too. Like, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me at all. It's like, you know what? In San Francisco, I learned a lot. And I saw people in Mercedes picking up girls on the streets that were heroin addicts. And these people were married gentlemen. And those diseases go home. That's AIDS, that's hepatitis C. Now, if you have an active needle exchange program, we're reducing it. We're reducing the risk. We're reducing the taxpayer. I mean, hepatitis C treatment was at $84,000. AIDS treatment, you're going on SSI, you're just dying. So you'll be on SSI until that happens. And that's what I watched in California. And I mean, they have huge problems out there, but they've been dealing with this a lot longer than we have. So they've got a little bit more tools in the tool belt, but they're still not where they need to be either. But they're aware of it, and they're willing to come to the table. And I think that's why Interact for Health really wants to get me involved. They said, we need the person that's been it, that's done it, that's through it, that's living it. And, you know, abstinence is my solution. You know, maybe I could drink a couple beers with my wife down here. I don't want to test it. I'm not interested. I'm fine with my life. You know, here's one of the reasons I don't do any of that. You know, I'm the pancake maker for 2 hungry little girls. You know, or you know, when my wife is asleep on the weekends, it's my favorite thing to do. I love to make pancakes for my little girls. But the thing is, you know, and it's hard. You know, you see these things online, you see them on TV about parents OD'd in a car with kids in the backseat. That's inappropriate for law enforcement. I think that's inappropriate to show. I think maybe that's something you show to people on the side. I mean, it really kind of demonizes people. And remember, everyone here was a person at one time. I'm this nice person talking to you all tonight, but yet I've robbed people in the streets. I've stolen. I've done everything it takes to get money in San Francisco, and I understand that. I understand that, and I've come to terms with it. And the people that care about me know me now. Like, this isn't the Brandon we know. Brandon was afflicted at this time with something that was not, you know, not so cool.
Question.
My name is Jerry. Thank you for coming and speaking about this. But I have a feeling that you could have programs to help addicts on every street corner, and it won't solve the problem. You will continue to need more and more programs. What about stopping the drug trade that's flowing in like an open faucet from Mexico? I've seen the television programs where New Orleans was hooked up to Houston, which is supposedly the center of where all these drugs are coming in. I've seen the on TV where they raided a drug house and they had billions of dollars. I mean, they were stacked of money these people are making. Uh, how are we going to stop the drug trade?
Never. They make way more money than DEA will ever have. They have way more firepower, and they can buy anyone they want, and that's how it happens. And the thing is, I think law enforcement is starting to understand is you can't arrest your way out of this problem, because sending someone to prison costs about $35,000 a year to us. Sending them to treatment costs about, I think, maybe $8,000 a year. I'd rather take my chance. And what California even did is they took minor possessions of heroin and cocaine, and they said their prison system, you'll see it on the news, they're getting fined by federal judges because they are 37% past capacity. So the um, the prosecutors of California got together and said, we're now making low-level felonies misdemeanors. And if you're the sheriff and you want to deal with it and keep them in your jail, you're not crowding our state prisons with these 2-gram, $50 pieces of heroin charges. Like, this is you're creating a class of people that are you're taking them out of society. And this is the prosecutors that put this law in. They went against the sheriffs and they won. And they said no more. These are misdemeanors. They said we're not into criminalizing all these people over small little mistakes. It's just a problem. It's just like what I had. Like, what I have now on my record would be considered nothing. They'd be like, and half the time I got called with stuff out there. They would say, Brandon, they knew me by name by that point, but they said, just go, will you do me a favor? I'm going to get back in my car. Will you go throw that in the garbage can, and then I'm going to leave. So whatever happens after that, happens after that. I don't want to see you on the street anymore tonight. Bye-bye. And that was it.
Hi, my name is Lori. First of all, I want to thank you for being such a great participant in a program that will help people coming out of the prison system. Personally, had a daughter that she's still very young. There's some things that are broken here with dealing with people that are in the drug in trouble and things. They try really hard, and I commend them for their trying. She was in a drug court program, graduated, even for probation officers, that I should have known to watch you closer than I did, because you were alone. And we teach them not to reach out to people, but if they've never had anybody else to reach out to, they're eventually going to become so lonesome. That's what they do. Then she got herself into a little bit of trouble with medically and such, and they offered her another program, but they said, but you can't go live with your mom because your mom called the police on you and you had a domestic violence charge. So you can't live with your mom. You got to find somewhere else to live, and you have to take care of yourself and come to a program. And she finally went in and said, it's too hard to send me to prison. It's too hard. And that's what's kind of broken. There needs to be some kind of a halfway house situation in Butler County, in our community, to help, people that are in this situation in that in-between stage. Us as parents, maybe we have been taken advantage of and stolen from and lied to, and they have to go from one part of recovery into a middle part of recovery to get to where you were, you know. So I commend you for, offering things to people that have things. And, we do need to keep helping them, but they do have to have that moment themselves where they recognize that they're finished and they are ready to move on with their lives.
Yeah, and that's a hard reality. I mean, I think the recovery rate from heroin addiction, it's not, a lot of people get off heroin, they move on to just drinking and alcoholism and other drugs. But I mean, to clearly be abstinent in recovery from that type of situation is, I think, about a 7% rate, which isn't, but my friend Tracy always goes, I hate that. That doesn't mean anything. She said that means that's a number that people are now saying they can't do it because they're not, am I an exception to the rule? I am an exception to the rule. Not everyone is. A lot of people are going to be the rule. A lot of people are going to die. A lot of people are going to. We live in that society where we didn't place this huge community role on making sure we address this. Now, Hamilton County was a little behind. They're addressing needle exchanges. They're doing these things, and we're moving in the right direction. And I think that's where we need to be, because you're going to catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And with that, the people I know that work with the needle exchange, they do testing, they get free hepatitis C testing, they get recommendations. Some of these people are in treatment now. They're in treatment. Would they be on a treatment if they didn't? No, maybe they'd have Hep C and they'd be dead at a friend's house because they used the same syringe over and over and over, got an infection and lost their arm due to an abscess. My good friend, my best friend from kindergarten, just to show you the different realities. I was on my honeymoon with my wife. They found him dead sitting on the back steps of an abandoned house in Avondale. He and I went to school at Bethany down the street. His father was a headmaster. Came from a good home. Very nice love. But that's love. That's how it was.
My name is Jim. This is my son. I asked myself a lot what I could have done differently to prevent this. And we've talked about it very honestly, and I don't think there was much we could do about it. He got started on drugs, and that was it. I am a forensic pathologist in Butler County, and I live this every day. We're averaging 4 and 5 drug deaths a week in Butler County. And fentanyl is the problem now. It's a different ballgame today. They're mixing fentanyl with opiates. You get OxyContin and some of these hydrocodone mixtures, and they look just like what you think they look like, but they're fentanyl. And we can't autopsy them all. What we're doing now in Butler County, the police are starting to get interested in pursuing the drug dealers. But you have to have a witness. You have to have a autopsy. If you go to court without an autopsy on a 22-year-old with a positive fentanyl and cocaine, the attorney will argue, how do you know that the drug killed him? I mean, it's ridiculous. They make it very hard. But we're starting to do more about it. And, we see time and time again these kids get out of a treatment center, and like Brandon said, they go right back to the drugs. They can't wait to get back to the heroin, and it's just the way it is. It's a terrible addiction. And I'm very proud of him. Only about 10% beat this. And he did it on his own. I supported him, but he had to do it on his own. And they say you have to hit bottom before you get up. And I think he hit bottom in San Francisco. And you any questions for me?
I'm Donna, and I want to congratulate you because
Thank you.
I know what you did was very hard. My son overcame a 22-year addiction from heroin. And I agree with what Michael said about they have to know they have to. And he credits us. We couldn't let him live with us most of the time. I couldn't leave my car doors open and things like that. But Cincinnati, are they still running that needle exchange? I thought the woman went to jail.
Well, yeah, that's a good thing. Libby is actually, I became good friends with Libby. I actually threw an event for them in 2014 when my friend Tracy came out from San Francisco. We showed the documentary and we were able to raise like $3,000 for them. Libby, Cincinnati let go of her. UC let go of the position because one, they didn't like the bad press. Two, everything came back negative. She tested completely clean. She's been clean for quite some time. She is dealing with a blood disease right now where she shouldn't have been driving around anytime. And she got caught and she made some bad decisions. So I know Chris Seelbach, the council member downtown, he is bringing it back up in May. And I think it costs about $160,000 for Cincinnati to take the program on. That'll run for a couple of years. And that's where it's, I think council's moving to get other people out of the mix, get some professionals in, maybe the health department. That's what San Francisco does. The health department manages it, make sure everything's being done, disposed of correctly and everything else like that.
I actually volunteered for that. I worked at the university.
Yeah, Judith Feinstein is a wonderful woman. She fought for that program for 8 years.
Another thing, did you know there's a professor at the University of Cincinnati in criminal justice who has proven with research that you don't send a drug addict to prison. It's completely the wrong way to go. And they are also starting a program to train supporters, brothers and sisters, on how to do the right kind of support and not be the enabler.
Yeah, the enabler, I mean, there's a difference. A lot of people get confused. A parent that cares is someone saying, I will take you out to get you something to eat. I will listen to you and talk to you. The enabler is, I'm going to call your work for you and tell them that you're sick, even though you just stolen some money and you're in jail. That's the line, the enabling the behavior. Like you said, a supporter would say, I can't do that for you. What I can do is show you that I love you, and I can show you that I will support you if you're willing to make some better decisions.
About needle exchanges, I'll also add that the very first needle exchange really in the entire area was catty-cornered from this building in Springdale. It was the very first one, and it only lasted about a month until the city council people got so much political pressure to have it removed, and it was shut down within about a month of when it opened. I think we've got time for maybe one last question. Anybody else who hasn't asked a question? Maybe two quick questions. We don't want to keep it random.
I would have a question for you. At the beginning, when he first started, did you know he was getting into drugs, or was there any way you could?
One thing that Brandon didn't understand is family dynamics. We had 4 children. He's the middle child. We had 2 very successful children already in college. And then he had a younger brother that he was influencing as well. And we were trying to keep his brother clean. And it's difficult. The one thing we never did, we never abandoned Brandon. He would call me occasionally from San Francisco and say, Dad, I need money. It's cold out here, it's raining, I need a hotel room. What do you do? You say, well, he's going to use it for drugs. But he's already on drugs. And maybe he is going to. Did you get a hotel room when you called him?
I plead the fifth. No, I didn't. I used it all on dope every time.
As far as thinking about when he was 13 and 14, there was no way that you could have stopped it, or how did he first get into that?
Well, a lot of these kids, I think, are self-medicating. I think Brandon will admit he has a learning disability. And we sent him to the Gow School near Buffalo, New York for 2 years. It's a school for dyslexic boys. In fact, we sent 2 children up there, Jacob, his younger brother, and Brandon went for 2 years. You think you were self-medicating?
I just got into it. It was fun at the time. In the boarding school, we were, smoking pot, doing acid and stuff like that. But I came back. I went to 4 different schools in 8 years. Every 2 years, I had to make new friends, and that was kind of, a lot of people have these friends, these long-term friends, like they can continue these friendships with. I was making new friends every 2 years. I didn't know, like, I didn't really have a base anymore. So I was just kind of, I was running with my crowd, and drugs were cool, and I was cool, and I was harder than anyone else. I could out drink you, out smoke you, out ask you, whatever. And that was my thing. That was what I wanted to be. And to answer your other question is, we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem. There's not enough beds in prison across the world to fill this. I think the drug dealers are part of the issue, but these guys shouldn't be. Every drug dealer I've ever met or known hated what they did. They hated it. They would much rather go to college and have a career. It's not some great lifestyle for them there. It's terrible. It's terrible all the way around. We need to bring those people out and get them into training too, so they can leave that world. They don't want to be in it just like we want.
Last question.
Um, my life when I was young was kind of mixed up and moved a lot and so forth. But I remember so well my teachers at when I was like in kindergarten, first and second grade, and some of my other teachers maybe later on. But we in Kentucky, we would always start off with a prayer and pledge allegiance, and you were meant, you were told that you were important, and they would always try to help you. And I know later on in life, I had a few teachers like that too, that when you are confused and maybe for one reason or another, you can't really catch on to what they're doing, that seemed to be very helpful. So now we don't have prayer, we don't pledge allegiance to the flag, we don't have pride in pride in our country and what's around us, so we don't have pride in ourselves. Don't you think that would be something that we start to stress? And and the thing that the drugs are bad. Let's tell these children the drugs are bad. So many of them already know that because they're coming from broken homes where that is a problem. Um, it's tragic that it's grown to the proportions it's grown. Do you think that would have helped you?
No, we said prayers and allegiance. We said all that. I went to Bethany up the street. That didn't mean anything to me. That was just part of the process. Okay, anyone can stand through and sing this or do that. That doesn't mean anything. And the drug addicts are great chameleons. Like, I could tell you a story. I mean, it's like I could lie to my parents' face and they'll tell me anything they want to know. Just make sure you give me the money. Give me the money. Give me the money. That's all things. And that's just, honestly, that's how things go in that world. And they'll tell you, I mean, I've seen people tell tales. They're just like, oh my God, you sold me on that. And, I mean, they're so quick. You could turn around, they'd be like, hey, dude, look, they got your wallet. They're walking down the street. See you, bye. Good. That's it. So I don't think those things will change anything. I think we've got a lot of soul searching.
Let's thank our guests tonight for coming. Great, great informative. Thank you very much, Brandon. Thank you all. And Lonnie, who's from Butler County in the back there, was kind enough to give me this information guide of all the different places you can call if you need help with issues, and you can feel free to talk to him on the way out. So, wow, what a powerful presentation. Thank you so much. So thank you all for coming to Empower You tonight. We hope to see some of you down in the city of Cincinnati tomorrow night for a very great presentation. Have a good night. Thanks.